The biggest misconceptions people have about the ego is that they think if they let go of their ego, they're going to be taken advantage of, which is absolutely wrong. You're going to be taken advantage of if you don't have healthy boundaries in place. You need healthy boundaries in order to have a healthy relationship. But you can't have healthy boundaries if you don't set them, and you set them by communicating them. And you can't communicate a healthy boundary when the ego is at the forefront. So we need to silence the ego so we're able to have an honest conversation with our partner where we let them know what our boundaries are. So why are boundaries important? Because without them, chances are we're either getting abused or we are abusing. And if our boundaries keep getting violated, resentment starts to grow. So let's look at an example of how violating boundaries can lead to resentment. So let's say you are a person that really needs personal me time, but you don't let your partner know at the beginning of the relationship, and your partner is the type of person that really wants to spend all their time with you, and because you're in the honeymoon phase, you just go along with it, but you feel like you're suffocating. And that builds up and it keeps on stacking to a point where you suddenly blow up. You blow up because your boundary has been violated over and over again. You've lost your sense of freedom. You've lost your sense of personal space. And if you had communicated that to your partner, chances are this wouldn't have resulted. So it's super important to let the other person know what our boundaries are. Another example of boundary violation turning into resentment could be, for example, you and your partner have been raised in different cultures and different environments, and some things that seem okay to him aren't okay to you and vice versa. And now that you're dating, you notice that your partner, for example, greets people by kissing on their cheek. And you feel really uncomfortable around that. You consider it inappropriate, but you don't address this to your partner because perhaps you're scared that you're going to lose the partner. So the partner continues doing this, not knowing that it's triggering you, and you stack up and you stack up and then you blow up. But if you had just had that honest conversation and explained to yourself that when this happens, I feel this, chances are the end result would have been much different. So what happens when our boundaries are violated and we don't communicate it to our partner? Chances are you might go silent, you might ignore the partner, you might stonewall them, you might have really passive-aggressive attacks towards them. So we really want to prevent that from happening. So we want to take a very proactive approach. So once our boundaries are violated, and most of the time we know what our boundary is once it's violated, we want to communicate it to our partner in the most respectful and calm way. So when we're communicating, we want to make sure that the ego is silenced. We're not name calling. We're not blaming. We acknowledge that it's the behavior and not our partner's personality that we're talking about. And we get really, really specific. So we say, when this happens, I feel this way, which makes me feel this way. And going forward, I will need this from you. So for example, when you show up late and don't call me to tell me you're running late, I feel abandoned, which makes me feel really hurt. Going forward, I would really appreciate it if you just called in advance and let me know. So setting boundaries can be difficult, but it's absolutely needed because then we can let the other person know what we're expecting in a healthy relationship. We're communicating, we're being honest with each other, we're being vulnerable with each other, we're being authentic with each other. And then when our partner does respect our boundaries, we really want to let them know. We need to tell them, I see that, I acknowledge that, and I appreciate that. Positive reinforcement always works. That's why teachers give it to us when we're younger, and it should also be applied in our relationships when we're older.